Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast that helps small business owners grow their confidence, sharpen their digital skills, and actually enjoy showing up online. I'm Sooz Young, your host, tech coach, and digital cheerleader, and every week I chat with brilliant experts to bring you practical tips, smart strategies, and the tools and tech to make business easier. From social media marketing to websites, content to confidence, AI to automation, we're breaking it down into simple steps you can actually use. If you're ready to make things simpler and more successful in your digital world, you're in the right place. Let's get stuck in. Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast where we explore what it really takes to thrive in a tech-first world and how to use digital tools to scale your business, your skills, and your impact. Now, when we talk about the future of work, there's a lot of noise. People are worrying about being replaced by AI, teams are overwhelmed by endless tools, and businesses are trying to keep up with the change while also keeping their people engaged. If the future of work wasn't robots versus humans, but humans with robots, that's exactly what the perspective that today's guest brings, along with a whole lot of clarity, calm, and confidence. Selina Thompson is the founder of Forward Transformation, where she helps organizations and individuals embrace digital transformation, not just by throwing tools at them, but by combining digital adoption, workplace learning, and a human-first approach to tech change. With a background in L&D and a deep understanding of organizational change, Selina guides leaders through the often messy process of transformation, making it easier to adopt new tools, support their teams, and build a culture that's future-ready. In this episode, we're talking about why tech change isn't just an IT project, how to make transformation stick, and what it really takes to help people feel empowered, not threatened by automation and AI. Let's get into it. Hi, Selina.
Hello, Sooz. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm really excited about today's conversation because you really lead the way when it comes to helping organizations with that transformational change. And that's really what the business is called, right? That's what it's all about.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit more about how you got into this space. Tell us about your journey so far. Let's hear it from you.
My journey, I'm gonna whittle it down, but I started off completely outside of the corporate world. I started in fashion. So I had big dreams of becoming the next Anna Wintour, and that didn't work. And so what do you do when you're penniless and looking fabulous? You get a job in the corporate space. So then I moved into the corporate world, and I was working in internal communications for quite a while. So I was transferring. When I was working in fashion, I was doing fashion journalism. So I was writing lots of articles and working on publications, and then I transferred that into the corporate space. And while I was there doing internal communications, I ended up working on projects. So as companies were going through transformation, then they wanted clear communications and messages to help everybody get ready. And that is where I then transitioned into change management and into learning. So just really taking it that step further, what are all the things you have to think about when people need to get ready for change? And what are the learnings that people need to know? And that is then where I specialized in digital transformation. So I ended up being knee deep in technology transformations and making sure people learn how to use new tools, as well as being aware of what's happening. And then move it on, fast forward, of course, the world got more and more technology advanced, more digital. And that's where I decided, actually, let me specialize in digital adoption. And the reason was because I could see that a lot of companies wanted to prepare people for the change, switch on the technology, and then say, we're done. And I was like, not really, no. This is actually the start of the journey, not the end of the journey. And so about 5-6 years ago now, I formed my company Forward Transformation, and it was because I saw companies stuck in moving forward. So I was like, let me call it Forward Transformation. And so that's what I do now. So I specialize in digital adoption consultancy. And then in the last kind of 18 months, moving that more into the education space. So developing courses and running workshops which are really helping people to get into the mindset of adopting technology and digital. So that's why today's conversation is going to be great.
This is what a journey to get to where you are just now.
Yeah.
And it's so important to help people adopt that mindset of changing with technology because it's constantly evolving. You'll see this within the different demographics, especially within the corporate space as well. There's some that are really willing for transformation and change, and then there's some that are really not open to change and not open to anything. They like their systems, how it works. But as we know, with technology, it's constantly evolving. So dealing with ambiguity is a huge part of what it is working with the digital sphere. So let's talk about that a little bit more. When you are presented with a company that's looking to implement digital transformation, how do you start to guide them through that process? Your steps for doing that, Selena?
Yeah. So I usually start off with what is the challenge that they're trying to achieve? Because what happens is the conversation starts with the new shiny tool that they want to implement, and they are convinced that they just need training guides or a newsletter. So my first steps is, okay, how did this come about? What's the business case for this? Where is this change going to help take the company in the future? How is it tied to your bigger company strategy? And what does the end look like for you? If it's employees or if it's customers using your product or adopting your service, what does that actually look like and what's at stake? And then from there, I then look at, okay, what is the best service or what's the best approach to take to help you get there? So I will also ask them as well, culturally, historically, what's the appetite for change? Or have you tried to do this before and it's failed? Are people fed up now of hearing about this, or is this completely brand new and you just want to get people on board? So taking into account the why, taking into account if there's any historical challenges towards this, and then I look at what's the best methods for them. And to be honest, I think in this space as well, change management, L&D, there are so many frameworks and theories and all the rest of it. But I really try with my clients to give them what's tailored for them. So I will use a combination of what's tried and tested, and I'll also look at if there's anything new as well that would suit them, because I do think every situation is different. Yeah.
I think your approach is much needed because I've seen an experience within the corporate world when there is that narrow view of it has to be done this way and it can only be done this way because
Yeah.
we've always done it this way. And so it's really working from the top down into helping explain that it needs to work from the bottom, top down, bottom up. Whoever's watching this, I've got it the wrong way around, but it really needs to come from the people who
Yeah.
are having to adopt the
100%.
change
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
what's going to make the best way for them to be able to
That's
have
it.
this change as part of their job, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is really interesting that I'll have, senior leaders reach out to me, say, we need this service. And it's like, yeah, but, and what are the people saying? Do they know? Are you in touch with them? And then even when we get further down the line and we're looking at how we're going to interact with the people who are impacted by the change, how are we going to communicate with them or even give them a safe space to share their views? And it's like, there's just nothing set up to talk to the people. So yeah, it's all about the people.
Do you find then that you have to build relationships when you're brought in to speak to the senior leadership? Then do you need to build relationships with all the departments that are involved in this transformation change? Talk us through a little bit about that.
Yeah, you do. I always remain objective in the beginning. I will hear, the version from the person that's hiring me, I guess, or the team that's hiring me. And that typically is IT, or it might be C-suite if it's tied to strategy. But I do make the time to go and seek out, even if it's just all the different leaders of the departments. Either if it's a small mid-sized company, then you can get round all the heads of departments in that small medium-sized company. If it's a large scale companies. Some of the companies I work with, they're multinationals, different places, and I will just choose maybe a short list of who I think are the main players and try and speak with all of them. And that might be joining one of their leadership team meetings. It might be having a one-to-one. It might be just saying, hey, like, who's a good person to speak to? Who's an influencer on the ground that I should get to know? And then that's how I tend to build up a picture.
I find that it's not just about then the technical skills that people need to learn. It's those human skills of curiosity, collaboration, teamwork, problem solving, all those kind of meta essential skills. I don't like using the word soft skills because they're essential. They're human.
They
That's
are
what we need.
essential. It's
Yeah.
very true. And it's funny, actually, I think now that we are 5 years post COVID and the pandemic, and that's where we really saw the world kind of go, yeah, I need technology. I need to connect with people. I need to keep things going. Now you're seeing the conversation shifting more to, like you say, these interpersonal skills, if you like. It's another word I see bandied around, against the hard tech skills, because I think people are starting to recognize now that actually you need this in order for this to be successful.
I've been talking about this for kind of 5-6 years now, and it's now becoming a little bit more understood by people, and it's quite nice to see that that happening. And it's a shame that a pandemic caused that, but it is nice to see that actually people are thinking we maybe need to be a little bit more human in this world of technology. So I want to address that when it comes to a generation that are moving into the workforce. Specifically, I'm talking about this kind of Gen Z, and as we move into Gen Alpha, there was a stat, now I'm not quoting this correctly, but it is around that kind of 70%. You might know the exact number, but it's like 70% of the workforce in 10 years' time will be that kind of Gen Z. I saw something recently that it's about 33% are millennials, and then there's a kind of 24% that are 24 to 30 that are Gen Z at the moment. So those are very different demographics, as well as boomers that are still within the workforce. Millennials tend to be within that management role or leadership role within companies. They're more adapting to change because we've been through, I'm saying me because I'm a millennial, older millennial, but I am within that. We've went from analog into digital. This is why I'm so obsessed with with those changes. But how do you see it with Gen Z? Gen Z coming in that have only known digital. Their skills are heavily digital. However, their human skills are lacking a little bit. Would you agree?
Agree. And it's funny because I'm like you. So I'm at the top end of the millennials. I've seen some changes like you. And I'm a tech head. I'm digital. I'm with Gen Z a bit, actually. Less contact. Less contact. Most things are virtual with me as best as I can, but that's just more of a lifestyle. And I think what you're seeing with Gen Z is it's not that they don't want to talk or they don't want to have interaction. I think they're just more clear on who they are and how they want to interact during their day, right? So they travel more. They have more disposable income. They also see work as something that you can do anywhere. It's a very different mindset to the other generations where perhaps you would, mainly come into an office, you would get together with your colleagues, you would have a chat at the water cooler. Gen Z are like, those little chats I can do on an instant message. I've got all my apps. And if I do want to get together in person, it will be for an experience. So I think that is where you're seeing the big difference there. They're just more clear on how they want to spend their time and therefore how they want to communicate and connect.
It's almost what we wanted as elder millennials.
It's what we wanted, but we couldn't. And also we wanted it.
We weren't allowed.
We weren't allowed. And also they weren't spending the money. I mean, I remember, only laptops were reserved for senior management, right? Only mobile
you had your
phones.
fixed desk.
Exactly. And you fixed, and these were all considered perks.
I don't know if you had this experience, but if you were not at your desk, somebody would say why they're not at their desk. If you're maybe in the kitchen or if you're in another space, like catching up with another team member, because you had to be at your desk. If you're not at your desk, then something else is happening. Something else is going online. Post-pandemic, it is, are they on Teams? Is there, are they on green? What does it state? Is their status?
And that's the thing. And I think that's where Gen Z have got the right idea, because they're like, listen, we're going to set our boundaries from now. Like, you can catch me on one of these apps
Hmm.
or wait for me to message you, or, have communities as well is like a thing
Yeah.
now. So yeah, it's just a whole different ballgame.
So I'm all for it and I'm all for the change. But what there's not is guidance on that. There's no instructions. There's no people in leadership. There's that kind of people moving into leadership roles that have had a completely vast experience compared to that. How do they handle that? What tips or advice could you give to somebody that's in a leadership role or moving into leadership role around how do you handle the ambiguity of how people want to keep in touch with each other?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, because I think, like you say, people move into managerial roles and they're not always given the guidance on these interpersonal skills, right? It's very much you're promoted for your technical skills and your knowledge. But I think the place to start is thinking about what is the culture of the team, or what is the mood or the tone of the team that you want to foster. Because if you're trying to foster an open and collaborative team, and a team that feels that they're not being micromanaged, for example, that they're feeling empowered, then actually this is where technology can be a benefit to you, because you can then have that discussion with your team member or your team, and you can say, okay, these are the values that I bring, and this is the sentiment of the team that I want to uphold. And then how do we do this? How do we have in-person time together, and how do we use the technology that we stay in touch and we keep things moving and we get the work done? And I think that's what's missing, is how you frame that conversation, or you frame that concept. Typically, what's happening with companies is, like you say, they're bolting from everyone being in the office together to, we've got all these technology and we're waiting on IT to tell us how to use it, or decide for us, what's the benefit. And actually, a lot of things are in your control, and you can make the decisions how you want to use these things.
And that was so different as well because previously you were told this is how you use the technology. Or you would
Yeah.
bring how you personally use the technology into the workplace. And if you wanted to make a change, it would be the manager going, no, we don't do that in this team.
Yes.
So I've had that experience of like, right, I'm going to set up a shared calendar in the team. Everyone can add their stuff into that calendar. This was 10 years ago when I was at Legal Corporate. People were like,
Mm,
what? We don't do that. And I'm like, well, it's so much easier if we've got like 16 offices and we've got the technology trainers all needing to manage a schedule. Like we're bringing this in. It's a lot of transformational change, took a lot of
yeah.
time to be able to make an impact. But there's so much change happening all the time with the tools that are inbuilt into a company's infrastructure. So is it the technology that helps the teams to be more agile? Is it by using project management tools? If people are not having to come into the office, if they're not working their set 9 to 5, how are people as leaders managing the workload and the workflow? Is project management required as part of that? Or is it the tools that are set up? What do you think?
I think it starts with the collaboration tools, right? So by that, what I mean is how you're going to message somebody, how you're going to call somebody, whether you just want to. And I actually have started doing this more now. So not worrying about Teams and Zoom and having to do face to face. And I'm seeing that also with my clients, that they also are like, I can just go back to using my mobile phone if
Yeah.
it's a quick, hey, I've got a question. And this is where WhatsApp is a big influence, right? Because back to what you were saying before about how did you used to stay connected, now that you have WhatsApp, for example, it's making people think, actually, I could just send a quick message, or I can have a quick phone call. So I think how you want to stay in touch and talk is the first step. And then what are the tools that we need to get the job done? And so that's where, depending on your work, it might be a project management tool, like you say. And I think they're great, the project management tools that we have out there. And again, I understand there's so many of them, but they are so good at being able to just even add small tasks for the team that you can check at the end of the week, or whether that's laying out a project and making sure you've thought of everything, a bit of a brain dump, and then organizing it. The project management tools are really good now, and they've simplified a lot. And then there's all the other tools, and I know we're going to talk about AI, but even just some of the AI tools to help you brainstorm or ideate your ideas and your thoughts, and then take the minutes, and you've just got that stock there, haven't you? So again, it's thinking about how you want to connect, how you want to work, and then think about which tool is best for you. And again, that's where think people fall over because they're thinking, which tool do I use, instead of thinking, what am I trying to achieve?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that because, again, this is what I think IT infrastructure is almost set up within large corporates, is that it's, again, I might get cancelled for this, but it's like an old IT guy, Microsoft guy, that makes the decisions on what they've done in the 90s and the early noughties to then continue that change. And I felt this when I moved from Apple into legal corporate. So I
Yeah.
went from the most technologically advanced company in the world. And I was like, yes, always innovative. We always had a new idea. That's what we did in
Yeah.
our daily meetings, was like, what's new, what's coming up. And I loved that atmosphere, and I still haven't got that back. I do on these podcasts, but it's still not the same. When I went
Yeah.
into then legal corporate, it was, right, we are Windows 2 versions behind, and we're bringing change into new systems that the lawyers need to use across 26 offices in 16 countries. And we're
Yeah.
going to implement a rollout of training delivery. And it was like, Jesus, we've not even got like the fundamentals in place as part of
I
this.
know.
But it was really like, I was like, why are we doing it this way? Why can't we do it this way? And again, it's that this is how it is. This is how it's done. And I think there's still a bit of that mindset. I think it's getting better, but there's still a little bit of that mindset in
There
some
is.
big of the bigger companies in that
Yeah,
way.
absolutely. And I think what is missing on that point, and what I always see doing digital transformation, is assumptions, right? So there's always assumptions that everybody is at the same, technical level or the same digital maturity as each other. And it's just not the case, because everyone's lifestyle is different, for example. So outside of work, how much technology you use is really up to you, right? And then when you get into work, depending, like you say, on the corporation and what their attitude is, or their strategy, even their finances, their budget, their capabilities for technology, then yeah, they might be quite limited, or they might be really advanced, like you say, like Apple. So removing the assumptions that everybody's in the same place and everybody's been exposed to the same level of digital maturity, I think, is where we need to remove some of that.
Yeah, it's again opening up the conversation amongst the team and taking those barriers down of going,
Yeah.
actually, let's communicate about what our skill set is like. Let's talk about, I do it this way, do you do it that way? And this is where I like to call this knowledge sharing, and
Yeah.
stop the gatekeeping that happens internally in teams to try and promote ourselves within that department, rather
Hmm.
than sharing with my colleague. And I think again, that happens in departmentals as well. So we'll see maybe the marketing team not talking effectively with the IT team that are updating the website, and then the business development team not effectively communicating that they all need to be talking together. So it's less
Yeah,
gatekeeping, more knowledge sharing, I see
absolutely.
as what needs to happen in the world of digital. Do you see that as well across all sizes of organizations?
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think what is good now, and again, we might get cancelled, the old school IT department, the old school IT teams are just getting wiped out. There's still some around, because
Hmm.
I see that style still out there, but it's getting eradicated, because the reality is that they can't gatekeep anymore. We don't have technology sat in a data room, with hard servers, and only one guy knows how to keep everything connected. Like, it just doesn't exist anymore. And also the demands are so much greater now. So it's just not physically possible. And I think that is a good thing, because people have a lot more control. Of course, there's governance that's still required. There's policing, security is heavy on the cybersecurity always, but I do think it's good that the gatekeeping is starting to eradicate. So you're right.
Which, yeah, and that's good,
Yeah.
because you do need to have like the risk team involved to be able to make
Mm,
sure that that's working also with compliance as
yeah.
well, and then making sure that if they're using cloud-based solutions, that all of that is integrated effectively, and then the data security, how that's all protected, and who has
Yeah.
access at what level as well. And so those
Yeah.
are some of the fundamentals I like to think of when you're making any sort of infrastructure change. As a creator, I used to spend hours re-recording voiceovers to get the perfect tone. But finding reliable voice talent, booking studio time, and editing takes forever, and it can break the bank. That's why I recommend 11 Labs. It generates ultra-realistic AI voices and even clones your own, all in seconds. With natural-sounding speech, multilingual support, and seamless text-to-speech conversion, 11 Labs powers podcasts, audiobooks, training modules, and more. No mic required. Ready to level up your audio? Try it free today at allmylink.me/TC11labs and bring your scripts to life with 11 Labs. What do you see as that kind of fundamental starting point for digital transformation when it comes to getting the teams to work together?
You know, the hardest thing, and I don't know what the answer is. I would love, perhaps, like you say, even some knowledge sharing on this. I think the biggest obstacle still remains people just not understanding how they work today. It's a mystery. So it's like gone and bought this shiny tool or these shiny tools that are going to transform the way you work, but you don't actually know or you haven't documented all your processes. So processes A to B, whether that's the IT department, marketing department, like you say, legal team, HR, there are ways of working that you need to know because you need to then know how the new technology is going to impact, but also make your life easier. And I think that is the biggest struggle. So I think in terms of fundamentals, like understanding your processes and the way that you work, got to do that.
That is so great to hear that, Selena, because
Yeah.
I think, again, it goes back to a few things that we've talked about. It is people gatekeeping that knowledge. And when we were in the office, it was, Joe did that. Go and speak to Joe. Joe's he's actually in a meeting, but you can catch him at this time. Go and catch him in the kitchen. You might be able to get a quick conversation to see if he can do that for you. Remember, it used to be that type of stuff?
Yeah,
Or you would check when
honestly.
somebody's online and you're in. Sending them a message.
You pray and they're not on the out of office for 2 weeks, right?
Exactly.
Because that's the only person that knows. Yeah.
And now it's like in this online space, we're looking at teams to see if they're available, or we're sending them an email and we're dropping in and we're checking to see if that person. But it's this openness to be able to share and creating space within companies for teams to be able to do that. I also think it goes down to how we actually individually use technology. We were never taught how to use technology unless, I mean, I got it at university, and then that's what we were all taught at that age from school into university. They removed that from the education system, technology, because they just assumed that everybody could use a device. And I think that's moved into the workplace as well, where they just assume that you can use technology. There's no specific technology trainer in all corporates, which I think that it should be mandatory. I think there should be mandatory.
Wild. Yeah.
And compliance should be mandatory. Technology training should be compliance-based training, as is money laundering and risk.
Absolutely.
Technology should be as part of that.
Yeah.
Because then you understand a system and a process and what that means.
Yeah. And also it stops the shadowing. It stops, what you call shadow IT. So I think, again, not understanding the ways of working, not understanding what's at stake, not creating that safe space for people to talk and collaborate about what's needed. With the compliance thing, then, because there's not an openness, you've got people doing all sorts with technology, scribbling away and going, well, I'm just going to use this app here under the radar and I'm just going to share this information here. And they've got no clue because, like you say, they've not had the education that is definitely required.
Yeah, it comes from, if you understand how one tool works, it usually works the same across all other tools. So this is why I think fundamental knowledge is super important, because that's when AI comes into play and it works off of data, algorithms and communication, especially LLMs, which are language-based. We have to be able to communicate effectively as we would a human in the same way that we would with a tool. So understanding systems processes, how we get from A to B using technology, how do you do that system in your workflow? How do you follow that process? How do you then communicate that to an AI tool?
Yeah.
Are you seeing that when you're starting to see companies going, let's implement AI? What are you seeing when
It's
people are saying that?
funny. They get it. They probably get the importance of it because of AI. So I think what in the past they could kind of get away with skipping some of the steps that you were just saying because the technology perhaps it wasn't evolving as fast as AI is. It didn't work the same as AI does. So they could get away with skipping some steps in terms of the processes and the workflows and they could just leave it. AI, you can't do that. If you do not lay that foundation, you will be in a mess. Or worse still, you could have data breaches and all sorts and getting sued. So AI, I think, is shining that spotlight and making it necessary to do that. And so what I'm seeing now is companies actually building that step in and going, whoa, actually, we need to build this step in. And that's why you're seeing a lot of AI proof of concept projects. So definitely away from big bang waterfall, we'll take 100 people with us and we'll take 100 years to get the technology rolled out. It's like, no, we're going to go small, check what we're doing, make sure that it works and it's all compliant. And then we'll look at how to roll out wider. And that's on the internal employee side. On the customer side, I think the big challenge companies have, as you know, is that the customers demand more and they want more. And it's very competitive space. So with AI there, they have to obviously roll out a lot faster, but again, making sure that everything is in place.
Compliance, legal, ethical, sustainable are also huge factors in that too as well. So there's this constant space of where people are trying to keep themselves up to date with that information. What are some ways that you keep yourself up to date in all of these aspects of digital, as I talk about with this picture behind me here, cyber, data, security, marketing? How do you keep yourself up to date with everything?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I feel like I'm in a privileged space that I have the time to do that because in order for me to be able to give my clients the best service or even just help people, right? Because it's even just in conversations, you can be standing at the bus stop with someone and you just randomly end up talking about technology and it's just being able to share things. I spend money on membership subscriptions. So, I have subscriptions to different technology spaces. I go to a lot of conferences and events. I read a lot. I watch a lot of programs and things on YouTube, podcasts. So consume a lot of knowledge, but I also try to ground myself in the reality because there is that space where you're consuming all the knowledge about technologies and AI and it's all great, but then you also need the real life experiences as well. And I think that's where going to networking events or even just understanding what's going on the ground with clients, what's your perspective on this topic or what's your perspective on that topic, and even like what we're doing now, having this exchange also helps to have your knowledge in a grounded way. So I do a mix of things to stay knowledgeable, but I appreciate I have the time to do that, and that is part of my job. I think for people who don't have the time, what I always say to them is, just an hour a week, right? Just an hour. And you can split that over so many days, or you can just have 1 hour. And that might be, hey, I'm in Google, tell me more about large language models, or tell me more about AI, or tell me more about this technology, or tell me, the benefits of how technology can help me with this particular problem. And you'd be surprised how much you build your knowledge quite quickly. But just start just with an hour.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I was at Data Fest this year in Edinburgh, and there was somebody from L&D. I'm not going to quote that correctly either, but they were talking about their teams getting 2 hours every 2 weeks to upskill, and they can choose anything around the digital transformation and playing with the in-house tools. And I love that expression that was used at the conference, and it was playing, because I think that's what we need to do, is engage and interact and play with the technology to take the fear out of it, because there's so much, I think, again, prehistoric, and it's really not. It's just the last 10, 20 years. But it's like knowledge that the tech is going to break or you're going to do something wrong, and that it's then going to be a consequence of you and your job. But when it comes to being agile and digital transformation, your approach? Is it play, engaging? What would you suggest to people?
You have to play. But here's the difficulty, because people have a kind of preconception that in order to play, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, I'm not going to understand what I'm doing. It stops them playing. And as we know, the play is actually really simple. You get online, hopefully you know how to get online. Don't want to assume. Hopefully you know how to get online. You know how to get to, one of these fantastic AI spaces. We won't mention the names of the big corporates unless they're paying us, but and once you're on there, just start talking and playing. And it's funny because even with family members, like my mum the other day, she's always ringing me up, can you help me write something? I said, you know what? That software, that button, I'm going to tell you how to use it. And within 20 minutes, she had some letters she needed to write back to some utility company. She's like, oh my God. And I was like, you see. But for her, she was like, I haven't got the time. I get frustrated. I don't want to do it. I was like, you've got to do it.
Stepping outside of their own designed kind of constraints that they've put around themselves into
That's
going,
it.
actually, I can discover a little bit more.
Mm.
I like to, when I was at Apple and we were training both staff and customers as well as businesses, I had a whole range of different types of clientele. Part of the challenges with that kind of older demographic was that in their day, the thing to work, they had to push it really hard, right? They had to hit it, like the television wasn't working, they had to hit it. They had to try things again and again. They would slam the phone down, all of this kind of analog kind of view of things. So they would think it would break, right? So they had a mindset and a mentality of like, these things aren't going to work, or if I try it, it's going to break, or it's broken because I don't know what I'm doing with it, right? And there's a lot of fear around them not understanding how to use the tool as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like just by you opening up a little bit of language there to what you were explaining to your mum, you were able to then change that mindset in some sort of way to her, and then she can see it and discover it herself as part of that and start to play even further as part of that too.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's where, as I was saying earlier, from having the years of helping organizations and helping their people to get ready for technology, that's what I noticed, is that it is a mindset to this whole situation. And there is a step that's missing. Like I was saying, the example of my mom, it was just literally unlocking that initial bit where she was like, it's going to be too difficult. And I think that's where, again, companies, because they're trying to do everything so fast, they're not taking the time to have that initial conversation. And so that's where someone like myself comes in and started to develop some frameworks for this. And with the work that you do as well, Sooz, it's like, if you spend that time, it's amazing what you can unlock.
Yeah.
Then everything else is going to flow a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you give them one little bit of information, that transforms everything, and it really just opens up like a floodgates of opportunity, and you can literally see it on the face when they go, wow, it can do something different. I like to call it generating wow moments. So when they get that first wow, then they just see an opportunity in front of them, and then they can start to explore and discover. And it's really the discovery side of technology, which I think is part of what that transformation is.
That's it.
And is that what you see as well when you're working with digital transformation within companies? How do you get them to start to see, oh, there is opportunity here?
You know what? It's funny because I think, 10 years ago, you had to wait for that sweet moment, didn't you? And if it ever came, because everything was taught conceptually, this is what we want to do, this is the future. And it would be screenshots and PDF files. And there's still a lot of companies that have got these big wieldy decks to show you.
Yep, and Captivates and all of that stuff.
All that. Whereas now, what is great is, because things like video is so popular and people's attention spans are so small, a lot of vendors and software suppliers now are going, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to show you this little video, or I'm going to, make it easy to log in, single sign on, boom, I'm in. Now I can go in and play around. And that is making a big difference to how people get started. Being able to get onto the tool faster, being able to see what the tool can do, and then have them conversations about, okay, this is how it works for me. And so that's what I always advocate for. I'm always like, can we get the demo? Can we just get the demo? I don't need Mr. IT over there and Mr. C over there to talk about it. We want leadership endorsement, but can you just show people what you're talking about? Because then you're going to get that wow moment, like you say.
Do you find that there are some resistance to that when it comes to implementing new tools? So we've talked about once they see it, they're overcome by enjoyment of it because they're playing with it. I'd like to go into that kind of resistance space on it, and how do you come up with some solutions for them when there is some sort of resistance, specifically within the AI space? So what are some opportunities that you give to people when they are trying to overcome AI resistance?
Yeah, so a lot of the resistance, as I'm sure you've heard, and I'm sure people listening are probably still in that space of don't really understand what this is. And I think it's going to replace me. I think it's going to take over me, and therefore I don't want anything to do with it. I know you're telling me about AI, but I just, no. Because if I understand what it is and then I realize I'm not going to have a job anymore, like forget it. So that is a lot of the resistance, is a misconception, shall we say, first. And then the second resistance is back to the understanding how to play. So where I've started to roll out my workshops and looking more at the digital mindset, what is coming up more and more is people saying, I just don't know how to use AI for me, how to get AI to work for me. Do you have any examples? Because, we're a legal team, or do you have any examples of how it might work for us in HR, etc., etc. And prompts are easy to do, and people don't realize how easy it is to do your own prompt. And I think that's where it's kind of heading now in terms of AI and the resistance.
So prompting is the first start then for people, is to try with the tools. Is that what you're thinking
Yeah,
here?
definitely. I think so. I think, unlocking that resistance is, first of all, being in front of the tool, and then two is doing the prompt, because that is when you get the answers that you're looking for. And also you get to see how things work in real time. And that's the difference, where before, when you had technologies, you had to wait for a training session, right? You had to have everything scheduled in, and you had to go to maybe a training center or something.
Yeah, you did. You
Yeah.
had to do
Yeah.
all of the, because that was part of my role when I was in corporate, was to be that
Mm,
technology trainer, and it had to be scheduled in. That was part of my role, to make sure that it was all scheduled as well, and then make sure it was all tracked in the LMS, because they had to make sure that it was compliance-based training so that they could get their CPD credits to keep their accreditation. So
that's
all of
it.
that is
Yeah.
still part of built into that kind of corporate infrastructure. So how do you deal with people that are super curious and using the tools in a way that's outside of what the company wants to use? How do you handle people that are on the other side of it? What would you recommend to people?
It's funny because I have to be really careful with some of these corporate clients. And I was doing a workshop the other day, and I had to just be on the fence. And the conversation was basically, I've tried to use an AI tool to transcribe a meeting, and it's come back not great. That's not what we said. It's misunderstood what we were doing. So we've tried. And I was basically saying to them, at the end of the day, if there are some tools out there where you're trying to use it and it's not working for you, that's okay. Actually, you don't have to use every AI tool out there. And the reason I was trying to position it politely is because I know a lot of corporations are using not free tools. They're on some kind of paid subscription tier, but it's probably not all the bells and whistles as if you're paying the full top dollar yourself on a personal account. So that's where you are seeing some differences, where you're using these AI tools. But that shouldn't prevent you from still exploring, right? I think it's then understanding the limitations of the tool that you're using. And so that's what I was advising, is that, okay, you try the tool for a certain exercise and it might not work fully the way you want. So look at what you can do with it and start to incorporate it in small steps. And then outside of the workplace, making sure, back to compliance, don't obviously take your work and your work data into your personal tools at home, but then use the time to practice with your personal information that you don't mind sharing. So at least you're getting to understand how it's all working. And eventually your organization will catch up and the tools that they're using will be more advanced. And that's where you're then not going to be behind the curve. So if you stop now because you're like, well, it didn't work for me, so I'm not using it anymore, you're going to be behind. So I think it's a combination of outside of work, keep learning, keep trying different tools and seeing what works. Inside work, understand the limitations. And that's probably where, again, back to all the different teams involved in rolling out AI now, because it really is a village these days, just being super clear on what the limitations are around these AI tools and what they can and can't do.
Of that, there's so many points of that kind of pull together everything that we've talked about, and I love that it brings it down to kind of the fundamental skills of them learning how to use AI tools, how to use prompt and using prompt effectively, how the infrastructure within their IT is set up in their company as well, and what they can and can't do. So where's the, as you mentioned, limitations there, but also what's the setup and what's allowed
Yes.
and constraints, that
Yeah.
are for the system as well. But then also building that knowledge sharing space, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they are not, rather than them going, oh, well, I'm not going to use this tool, going, how can I use this tool? How can I train this tool better? Or how can I train myself to train
Mm-hmm.
the tool to make it work for me? Again, that mindset shift of changing into curiosity, into collaboration, instead of, I'm just going to shut the door on this and I'm not going to use it because it doesn't do what I need it to do. So there's lots of
Yeah.
these things together that are kind of making
Yeah.
that come within the company, I think, as well, isn't it?
It is. And I think actually you hit on a good point there in terms of what's still needed to make an AI rollout successful. So, where companies that excel well with AI is because they're still in their technology teams with their developers and product managers. They are doing exactly what you just said. They are training the tools and exploring and doing different things, but they're forgetting to also at the same time do that with the rest of the organization. So if you are not close to the experimentation, if you like, then you're not doing the same practices. And so I think then that's where it's still behind, because that person that's given up over there, in shared services, procurement, whatever, who's not as close is going to be far behind. Yeah. Yeah.
I find as well that the relationship between IT and the individual is also got so much historical challenges with it as well, because they could
Yeah.
have raised a ticket with IT and then maybe that IT is either in-house or outsourced, and they've maybe had some challenges with just even simple password resets that might take 4 to 5 days to get
Yeah.
into a system that they're using. So they're going, okay, go and play with the AI tool. It's built into your Microsoft 365 package. Go and play with it. But there's so many constraints that are set up within
I know.
what
And,
they're
and
allowed
this
to
is a
use
lot.
as part of it. So it's a
I
lot of
know.
change.
It's a lot. And I think across the board, you're right. This is what people, because we don't talk about it enough, right? So we say AI is brilliant, and it is, and use these tools. And what we're not talking about is, hey, by the way, if it's a free subscription, it will do so much. If it's a paid subscription, it will do so much. Do you need to spend that kind of money? And also, what comes up quite a lot as well is people wondering if they're not being successful because they've not been on a certificated
Yeah,
course. And by
training.
certificated, I mean like these thousands of pounds AI courses that are really meant for engineers, as opposed to, I just need to get started and I just need something smaller. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm right in the middle just now of delivering a practical AI and automation skills for data success course. And I have a range of different learners on the course from different backgrounds and industries, some that are in public sector, some that are in private sector, some that are also looking for work at the moment. And they're collaborating together in this learning space and communicating how their environments are working as they're playing with the tools, right? Because that's what we teach,
Hmm.
is the practical aspect of it. So one, it's in the public sector, has access to 365, but also a shutdown version of 365. 365 has got so many add-ons that are premium that I've not
Mm,
seen as much on some of the other tools. Another person is in the education space and they are using Gemini because that's built into their Google workspace that they're using. So Gemini is a little bit more open and it's automated as part of their systems. And then we're seeing some in the private sector that are not allowed to use any of their tools at all, they've been able to practice using their free versions of ChatGPT. And what we're seeing in this knowledge space, this knowledge sharing space, are all of these conversations around the limitations and what they've tried to get around it. Right? So they've problem solved it for themselves, but they've done that after learning prompting fundamentals, which is what we've
Yes.
done as part of our prompting engineering as part of it. So I think
Yeah,
that kind of sums up a lot of what we've talked about around
it
this kind
does.
of transformation change of where it's not just about the tools. It's not just about the humans as part of it. It's the collaboration between these, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is. Yeah.
So the topic we talked about, like the title of this session is like the future of work isn't robots versus humans, it's humans with robots.
Yeah.
What is that for the future, do you think, just now,
I
Selena?
think we've landed there, right? Because if you think about, the flow of this conversation, what we've talked about, this is exactly where we've landed now. Is once you are comfortable with, let's say, AI and then see robotics and other things, you will be okay with having, whether that's a physical robot next to you or a AI agent, that's all coming through thick and fast as well now, isn't it? You'll be more comfortable with having that in the workplace because you understand the benefits and you understand the role that you play and you understand the role that that technology plays. And so I think that's what the future is. Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed is a way to go. But I do think the future of work is having both alongside each other and having that collaboration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that, Selena. It is the collaboration between both the tools, the humans, and making them work effectively together. And that's what you're
Hmm.
doing as part of your forward transformation. So
Yeah.
you've got a little guide for people as well that you can help them kind of overcome this resistance. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what that is and what that's kind of made up of, Selena?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you hit on it earlier. The biggest obstacle in the beginning is the resistance. When I'm talking about resistance, it's not just that, I'm guarded and I don't want to. Resistance can also be, I'm scared. I'm not sure. I don't know what to do. So what I've done, and that's just as a starting point for people, is developed 10 prompts. So back to the prompting, 10 prompts that people can use to overcome resistance to AI. And it's in a sequence of events. So you start with trying to understand the root cause of the fear, because there's always a why, there's always an underlying reason what's blocking you, what's stopping you. So starting there and understanding, okay, what is the real reason I don't want to use AI or technology? And then working your way through so that you then say, okay, how can I reframe this fear, if you like, into a benefit for me? So then working through the prompts to look at how can this benefit my particular situation or myself? How can I get the information and the answers, and how do I keep going? And so by the time you get to the end of the 10 steps, you should have overcome that fear of the resistance, reframed your mindset, and be more empowered to keep going. And from there on in, that's where I stop. So, again, I'm always all about getting you into the mindset, encouraging you to use the technology, and then you can go forth onto the different technology courses and get
I
completely upskilled.
love that so much because it is kind of breaking down that fear. And it is, you've really raised that throughout this conversation. It's a lot about that apprehension. And I think it just boils down to us being afraid of the
Yeah,
technology
afraid of what you don't
and
know. Mhm.
change, adapting to change, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, and the good thing with having the 10 prompts, you can have this at home, you can have this at work, you can have this, on your commute, and you can just scroll through. So yes. I think you're
brilliant.
going to share the link anyway to that. So yeah, feel free to download. It's all free.
Yep, it's forwardtransformationchange.com/10 prompts 2 overcome AI resistance. But it'll be in the show notes. It will be wherever you are watching or listening to this. And go and connect with Selena on LinkedIn. And where else can people connect with you, Selena? Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, you'll find me on LinkedIn mainly because I love a good conversation and reading people's posts and commenting. I'm also on Instagram, so at Digital Ready People on Instagram as well.
Okay, great. And all this will be in the show notes as well. I want to talk forever with you, Selena, because we just are I feel
We're
like we're
on the
just the early
same
stages of
wavelength.
this, and we're on the same wavelength of it as well. We're both trying to help people feel comfortable with their technology and have the
So,
mindset to approach it effectively. And I know that when
mhm.
that that when we first met, I was like, oh, I'm really excited to get you on the podcast because we can talk about it even further. So what are some 3 tips that you can share with people around anything that we've talked about today, or anything around what you do as a business as well? What can you share just to finish off today's episode, Selena?
Yeah, no, thank you. And before I share the tips, I just want to say thank you for a great conversation, Susan, having me on the podcast. It's been
It's
great.
good fun.
Yeah, so I think to sum up the 3 tips from our conversations, number 1 is to really think about why you might be resisting technology, being honest with yourself and looking at, okay, what's at stake if I don't overcome this fear? Because as we've said earlier, technology is evolving very fast, very quickly. You don't want to be any further behind than you may be already with your upskilling. So try and get to the root cause of what it is, and then look at, okay, what do I need to do to overcome that? So I would say that's tip number 1. I think tip number 2 then is around collaboration. And again, what I try to do with my clients and also on my teaching with workshops is, how can you find people to collaborate with to play with technology? Okay, so you don't have to do it all on your own. Once you've got overcome your resistance, where can you make this a group exercise? Where can you collaborate perhaps with other colleagues to say, hey, how can we use this technology to move forward? And then I think number 3, which also touches on a bit what we mentioned earlier around knowledge and how do you consume knowledge and how do you stay up to date? I think tip number 3 is making that commitment to yourself to say, you know what, same way I might go to the gym, or I might go for a walk, or I might listen to a podcast, I'm going to put aside the time to learn this and start off with free tools like we mentioned earlier. If you have a bit of cash, then pay for some paid subscriptions, but making that commitment to keep playing and keep learning is probably tip number 3.
I love it. Play at the heart of everything, Selena. That's very
Play.
much what I like to do. Let's play. We don't need to be children to play. We adults, we can still play. And we know that that's what people do in their free time. They watch
Yeah.
football, they play with games on their phones. It's no different in the workplace. It's no
No.
different in how we communicate with other people. Let's break
Yeah.
down these barriers. The
Yeah.
technology's there to help us, and let's play. Let's play with it. Let's have fun.
All day long.
Thank you so much, Selena. It was
Thank
great to have
you.
you on today. Anyone that wants to reach out to Selena, all that information will be in the show notes, and have a great day. Thanks for listening to Digital Dominators. I hope today's episode gave you something practical, or at least a bit of a boost to keep things going in this mad digital world. If you're enjoying the podcast, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. There's loads more good stuff on the way and some brilliant guests lined up too. And if you fancy going a bit deeper, come and join the Digital Dominators community. It's totally free, and it's where I share bonus trainings, podcast extras, and tools to help you build confidence with your digital skills. You'll also get access to my social media prompt calendar, so you can finally stop staring at that blank screen wondering what to post. Just head to technologycoachingonline.com/digital dominators to get started. Alright, that's it from me just now. Stay curious, keep showing up, and I'll catch you in the next one.